There we go.
Well, that's me, but I'm not sure who else. All right, let me give you co-host.
All right. So I can share now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep doing that. Here we go. What are you seeing?
It's taking a moment, but something's loading. There you go.
Do you see my slideshow with all the little slides?
Yeah.
So if I go into slideshow, what are you seeing? You're seeing it in presentation mode?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Should I leave it up or pull it down?
Pull it down just for a second. So that when Dale gets on, he can introduce the meeting and I can introduce you, and then you can put the slides up.
Okay, but I'm not sure I could replicate what I just did, Judy. You're pushing me.
Oh, come on, you do this all the time.
Yeah, but I always mess it up. Hey, Alan, how are you?
Hi, Bob. Nice to see you. Thank you for doing this tonight.
Likewise. Well, wait till I'm done and then you can thank me, Alan.
Okay.
You never know.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Oh, Mr. Palguda, ooh, a lot of
Bob
pressure.
Lavigna,
Hey,
how
John.
are you?
I am well, John. How are you?
I am very good, thank you.
You haven't aged at all, John.
Well, you're my role model, Bob.
I'll tell my kids, John, that I'm somebody's role model. They'll be surprised by that.
Hi, Bob. Pablo. It's nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And hi, Derek. Nice that you're joining us. I appreciate it.
And Bob, you saw that the new Pope, his civilian name is Bob.
I did see that. So do we have any college basketball fans here? Okay, so the Pope went to Villanova, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard that he was a walk-on to the basketball team, but he only played when they needed a Hail Mary. Isn't that a good one?
That is very good.
I made that up. Oh, come on, John. Somebody said it's a good dad joke, and I said, no, it's better than that. It's better than that.
I heard Villanova expects to win the tournament next year, though, now.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that stuff. And then
Yeah.
the Knicks with the 3 Villanova grads.
Yeah, yeah.
Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting for everybody to join, and I just want to give you a heads up that this event is being recorded.
So keep it clean.
Good to see everybody so far on our screen.
Indeed. Okay.
Hi, Mama.
Josh, it's good to see you. I thought you were going to miss the meeting today.
Yeah, I'm taking care of my brother, but I was able to join the call, so he's pretty much taken care of at this point of the evening, hopefully. So didn't want to miss this one, especially with the 2 students on the line, the essay contest winners. So definitely didn't want to miss that.
I'm really glad to see you.
Glad to see you as well.
Surprisingly fun. Carol, it's nice to see you.
Hey, it's great to be here. Good to connect with everyone again.
Carol got me started when I first joined Spot ASPA.
I mean, I was a partner in crime. You have done extremely well.
Oh, I appreciate that, but it's really nice to see you.
Hey.
Just wait a couple more minutes and then we'll get started.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all. And thank you, Judy, for getting things started. I had a little trouble getting into Eventbrite, but I'm glad I'm here now. So we'll wait another minute or so. We all see some familiar faces here, most of our board members, and many or a number of chapter members are also joining us now.
And again, for anybody that's just joining, this event is being recorded. Dale, why don't we go ahead and get started?
Thank you, Judy. Again, welcome everyone and good evening. Welcome to the 2025 annual meeting of the ASPA National Capital Area Chapter. I'm Dale Jones, the president of our chapter, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Mr. Bob Lavigna, as well as our chapter awards recipients that you will meet a little bit later. Our student essay contest winners, you'll meet them later also. Chapter members, board members, fellow ASPA members from our national ASPA organization and other chapters, as well as others that are present among our group. Our chapter mission is to provide value to our members by fostering connections and promoting the value and experience of public service. And I assure you that our members of the board of directors are dedicated to helping our chapter fulfill that mission, and we are fulfilling that mission. Thank you, board members, and thank you, all of our chapter members, for your commitment to public service and to our chapter. At this time, what I would like us to do is all of our board members, and there's 11 of us in total, those that are here, briefly introduce yourselves by stating your names and your role on the board. And if you want, you can quickly say something about what your current professional role is. So I'll call on each one of you to keep us moving here. First, Joshua.
Thanks, Dale. My name is Joshua Lanier. I am the vice president for the National Capital Area Chapter of ASPA. In terms of profession, I previously worked at the GAO, like a lot of people on this call, or you, I should say. Currently, I'm now in congressional affairs with the United States Secret Service. And I've been with this organization for approximately 2 to 3 years now. Over. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you. Keisha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Keisha Gill, and I am the secretary. I've been a board member at large for a period of time, and I've just stepped in and to the secretary role. So I'm excited to continue to support the board. In my professional life, I am an assistant division director with Fairfax County's Neighborhood and Community Services.
Thank you, Keisha. Wendy, she might not be here, but I'm stalling here for a moment. Okay, Wendy's not here. She is our treasurer, and I will mention her a little bit later in my state of the chapter remarks to let you know a little bit more about her. Connie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Connie Braheen, and I'm the chair of the membership for ASPA. And my current profession is I work for the federal government of the Department of the Air Force. And I have been with ASPA since about 2017. Started out as a member and then was elected to the board. So I'm happy to be here with you all this evening. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Connie. Kitty.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kitty Woolley. Currently, I'm the programming chair. I'm a retired Fed. I'm the founder of Senior Fellows and Friends, and I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Thank you, Kitty. Paula.
Everyone, I'm Paula Acevedo, and I'm the communications person on the board. I currently work at the NIH in grants management.
Thank you, Paula. Is Whitney here?
No, she's not.
Okay, Whitney is in charge of our webpage communications, and she had a lot to do with sending out the communications or establishing it, posting it on the website. Paula also communicated it through our newsletter this meeting. Next, we have 3 members at large. The first one, Judy. She's also our former president.
Hi, everybody. Judy England Joseph, live in Alexandria, Virginia, retired from the Government Accountability Office, but am currently a reemployed annuitant there, working in their Center for Audit Excellence. And I also work for another company that Bob Lavigna knows very well, CPS HR, which is a company out of California that works in only the public space. I work in its Institute for Public Sector Employee Engagement on employee engagement issues. And I'm a Napa Fellow.
Thank you, Judy. Alan Lomax.
Hi, Alan Lomax. I too am retired from the Government Accountability Office, and in my current professional life now, I'm a community organizer in the city of Alexandria. And on the board, I serve as the co-chair of the student essay contest.
Thanks, Alan. And Stephen Putansu. Okay, he's on our board also, and he is a member at large. Thank you all, and thank you for your great service to our chapter. We have an exciting and full agenda for tonight's meeting. The kickoff piece of our meeting is the keynote speech by a distinguished public service professional. Judy England Joseph, former chapter president and current board member at large, will introduce our keynote speaker in a moment, and she will moderate that part of the program. After the keynote speech, a discussion and conversation will take place with the speaker, and a Q&A portion will follow. The next events will be our annual chapter awards and annual public administration student essay contest winners. Judy will also moderate the chapter awards, and Joshua Lanier, our vice president, and Alan Lomax, member at large, will moderate the essay contest winners portion. The final part of the meeting will consist of a brief state of the chapter address from me. And I didn't tell you about myself. Quickly, I've completed 2 careers. The first career as an Air Force officer, the second career as a university professor and administrator. And I'm now just beginning my third and shortest career, which will be as an executive leadership coach. It is now my pleasure to turn the program over to Judy. As she mentioned, a distinguished former senior executive service member who spent most of her career with the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Judy.
Thanks, Dale. And I want to be sure that you all know that this whole meeting is very conversational. So I'll be monitoring the chat box to make sure that if you have questions and you want to type them in, you can, but you can raise your hand, or it's a small enough group that if you want to just interrupt, it's okay to interrupt too. But we want to be sure that you feel the opportunity to ask questions, make comments, add to any of the discussion, particularly in the section right now when we talk about what Bob Lavigna is going to speak about. So I'm thrilled to be able to introduce you to Bob Lavigna. He is a person that I have known for 50 years. When we were maybe in elementary school, right, Bob?
You
He
got it.
too started at GAO. So he was actually 1 year ahead of me. And I kind of followed in his footsteps, literally, because he went from GAO to working in the state of Wisconsin to working for CPS HR and corralled me to work with them way back in the early 2000s. And then he went to the Partnership for Public Service as their vice president for research. He got me to come to work with him on research projects. And then when he left us, I became the head of research there for a brief time as well. He then went back to Wisconsin, did a number of things with the state government, but particularly at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. He was the chancellor there for, or it might have been called vice chancellor for HR, but it was all important human capital activities within that university system. And then he went back to CPS HR, became the founding executive to develop the Institute for Public Sector Employee Engagement. He did that in part because he wrote a book about public sector employee engagement, the only one that I'm aware of that's been written out there for the public sector exclusively. He is now a senior fellow with UKG. If you don't know UKG, it's a technology company, but it's a technology company in the human capital space. And it helps companies, both the private sector and public sector, with workforce management and human resource management services. And he focuses at UKG, again, almost exclusively on the public sector. So I'm giving Bob the opportunity to speak with the idea that I have some questions, and I hope you have some questions for him. And he has a slide deck. So Bob, why don't you go ahead and put your slide deck up? We'll see how tech savvy he is. Well, see, there you go. You work for a tech company and you can do that really well.
So you can see it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. That was the biggest challenge.
So go ahead, Bob. Why don't you get started and then we'll take questions.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Judy. And if I were to talk about all the ways that Judy has helped me in my career over the past 50 years, it would probably take up the whole hour and a half. So I'm very grateful for her and also for the opportunity to speak with you today. And it's very meaningful for me, not just because of my long friendship with Judy, but also because of my long relationship with ASPA. I'm also a past chair of the section on personnel and labor relations. So it's really, really great to be with you. And as Judy just said, I've been in the world of work for 50 years. And sometimes people say, Bob, when are you going to retire? And I say, well, I've already retired 4 times, like you, Dale. I'm on my 4th or 5th career. And I keep doing this because I believe in government. And I believe in the ability, the power of government to help the people that government serves, federal, state, local, special districts, to live meaningful lives. And I'm very grateful for the work that government does. And of course, the ability of government to deliver for 330 Americans depends on talent, right? Having the right people with the right skills in the right time, in the right places, at the right times. And that is becoming increasingly difficult, and we'll talk about that, especially in the public sector. And as the pandemic recedes in our rear view mirrors, thank goodness, one of the lessons we've learned is that it created a permanent evolution in the world of work. Where, how, and why people want to work has changed. as a result of the pandemic. And again, we'll talk a little bit about what this new world of work means. And of course, when I speak about this stuff, particularly to folks who are current federal employees or were federal employees, it is impossible to avoid what is going on with the current administration. And, you know, I won't speak directly about DOGE or any of the other stuff, because the Megatrends project, and I'll describe what that is, was conducted before all of this and covers all sectors, not just the public sector. But I think really what is going on makes the challenges I will talk about even more challenging at all levels, not just the federal government. And those of us who are committed to public service, like you just described it. Thank you very much, Dale, for allowing the board members to tell me a little bit about them, because that was very helpful. I know I'm preaching to the converted. We understand just how tough these times are. And rather than what I'm going to talk about being overtaken by events or irrelevant, I think it is more relevant than ever, the implications of these megatrends for public sector recruiting and hiring. And of course, it will require leadership to get through this, especially great leadership by career people. And we'll talk about that. So let's dive in. By the way, greetings from Madison, Wisconsin, where I live and where winter is almost over. Though actually, it's been pretty nice this week. So Judy talked a little bit about who we are. I'm not going to do a commercial. We are a human capital management software company. We have about 80,000 customers around the world, $4 billion in revenue, 2,500 public sector customers. But even though we're a technology company, we understand that technology is only part of the solution. It is a tool. We have the best technology in the world, and we think we have the best human capital management technology in the world, but you have to have talented people. And that's why our goal with all of our customers is to help them do the stuff that's on the bottom of this slide. That is, achieve organizational performance, more connected workforces, and more engaged people. And that's why our motto is our purpose is people. So enough about the commercial. So when I say we're in a new world of work, what do I mean? It's really about changed employee expectations. Employees today have different expectations about what they want out of their jobs and their personal lives and how to mesh the two than they had 5 years ago. They want flexibility, whether they're working remotely like I am right now in my basement, or they have to continue to report to their work sites. They want the organizations to provide them with flexibility. They want voice. They want to know the organization is listening and maybe will do something with what they have to say. And they want the organization to focus on well-being. Surgeon General report included results of a survey, national survey across the entire US economy, showing that 81% of the respondents said they want to work in organizations that care about their well-being. You know, this great resignation, we and others have called it the great reassessment, intense competition for talent. And I know there's a lot of hubbub about this, DEI and demographics, but the reality, the truth, the facts are major demographic changes in this country are only going to accelerate. You may not know that in the 2020 census, for the first time since the census was done in 1790, the number of white males in the US population actually declined, the first time ever, as just one example of what's going on, which means that DEI and you know, I think there's a lot of controversy is more heat than light. Diversity is not just the right thing to do, it is a business imperative. And really what many organizations have right now is a bifurcated workforce. Employees who are working remotely, employees who must continue to report to their work sites, different needs, different expectations. We have to understand them in order to meet them. So what is this Megatrends thing? This is an annual research project that we do at UKG through our Workforce Institute, where we assemble, not literally, we actually speak to about 200 thought leaders around the world in all sectors. And we also review research studies, academic and practitioner, to understand what these thought leaders and what these researchers are saying are the key trends that are occurring right now and what the implications of those trends are for the future. So that's very broadly what Megatrends is. And I'm going to give you a pretty high level discussion of them because of our time limits to give you a sense of what they are and, more important, what the suggested responses should be for organizations. So there are three megatrends: the escalating global labor deficit, the amplified employee engagement imperative, and as Judy mentioned, employee engagement is something that I've been working on for about 20 years. And then, you can't go 10 minutes without hearing about AI, right? Reading about it, someone talks about it. Our take on that is the connection, the human AI advantage. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly and then wrap up with some suggestions about how organizations, including in the public sector, can respond. So the number one, or the first one, escalating global labor deficit. So I'm going to put you to work now. Based on this survey by the Conference Board, what did CEOs globally say their number one priority is? So let's use the chat feature. What do you think? Globally, CEOs are saying their number one priority is. I'll give you about a minute. Ooh. Employee retention, talent, anybody else? Recruiting talent, retention, employee commitment. Okay. Usually when I ask this question, sales, revenue, marketing, R&D, but you got it right. Attracting and retaining talent, the number one priority across the globe. CEOs. Global talent deficit, 75% of employers globally are struggling to fill open positions. And in the US, we have a worker shortage right now, a little over 1 million. That is only going to increase. By 2032, there'll be a shortage, a deficit between number of jobs and number of people to fill them of about 6 million. There are a lot of reasons for that. Demographic changes, fewer babies, fewer, we've been hearing a lot about that lately, right? Skills mismatch. But for whatever the reason, a global, US deficit rather, of 6 million by 2032. How about in the public sector? Every month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics produces its workforce report. In March, 538,000 vacancies in government, federal, state, and local, and only 192,000 hires. So the ratio of vacancy to hires in government is more than twice what it is in the private sector. That gap has persisted for years now. 89% of state and local governments had to reopen their recruitments last year because they didn't get enough applicants. 2 out of 3 state and local HR directors said the retirement wave that we've been hearing about for, like 20 years is occurring now or in the next few years. And we could spend an hour just on that data point because it has implications for succession planning, knowledge transfer, recruiting and hiring, leadership development, and so on. But this talent gap is even more acute in the public sector than it is in the general economy, without even getting into what's going on right now in the federal government. So those are the data points supporting, some of them anyway, for number one, the global labor deficit. Number two, the employee engagement imperative. So what do we mean by employee engagement? Let's define it. It's creating an environment where employees feel valued, they're proud of what they do, and they feel trusted, and they feel like they're included. So what we know from the research is employees who are engaged are willing to deliver for the organization, what's known as discretionary effort, researchy term, which just means they're willing to do whatever it takes, within reason, of course, to help the organization succeed. What's the business case? Part of UKG is the Great Place to Work Institute, which certifies organizations around the world, been doing it for 30 years, as great places to work based on the Institute's Trust Index survey. And we have around 10 million employee surveys that we can analyze. So what you see here is Great Place to Work has analyzed how employees responded in certified organizations compared to the US average. I'm not going to read these, you can read them, but I like to focus on the recruiting and retention. And look at these differences. These are not just statistically significant, these are meaningful differences. 86% to 54% promote their organizations to family and friends. 84 to 55 plan to work there for a long time. We know with this database of 10 million employee survey responses that Great Places to Work have 50% less turnover than other organizations. And that's across the entire US economy. How about in government? We have data from where Judy and I work, the Institute for Public Sector Employee Engagement, national survey to understand the level of engagement and the impact of engagement. Engaged employees in government across all three levels are 10 times more likely to say their organization is achieving its mission, twice as likely to say they believe they can influence cost savings, which we're hearing about a lot these days, not just in the federal government, but also state and local. 3 times more likely to say they can influence customer service, 3 times more likely to say they're going to stay, and 4 times as likely to say that their mental health is good or very good. What happens to us at work affects how we feel about our lives in general. It may surprise you to know that there's research showing that highly engaged employees are also better parents. And you know the old saying, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. Managers make a massive difference. According to Gallup, 70% of the variance in team engagement, low, medium, and high, is attributed to the manager. 69% of employees say their manager impacts their mental health. That's the same percentage of employees who say their partners impact their mental health. So their job is just as significant in terms of their mental health as their partner. So those are, again, some of the data points about why engagement is important. And I know I'm preaching to the converted. So the last megatrend is what we describe as the human AI advantage. So some data. You know, we also often hear about how employees are scared about AI. Well, our research shows that employees aren't necessarily scared. They just want more information about AI. They want the organization to be more transparent about the ways that AI will affect them and will improve their work. So it's not just they're fearful, they just want information. And this leads us to what the Boston Consulting Group has described as the 10-20-70 rule in terms of successfully implementing AI. 70% is about people and change management. 10% is about algorithms, 20% is about data feeds and other technical stuff, but 70% is about people and change management. So it's not just about technology, it's about people. So a quick trip, I do a much longer version of this, through the megatrend, but what does it mean? What are the implications for how organizations should respond? Responding to the global talent shortage, workforce and succession planning. Understand what you need in terms of skills, what you have now, and what you need to do to close that gap over time. And I showed you some data about impending retirements, do succession planning. Diversify talent pipelines. I don't know if any of you know of the organization called Opportunity at Work. It's actually headquartered in the district. It is leading the national campaign to do away with paper credentials like college degrees and years of experience where they are not necessary. There are 74 million people in the US economy who do not have college degrees. And we need to bring them into the workforce, give them opportunities. About 20 states have eliminated college degree requirements where they are not really required for state government jobs. Streamline the application and hiring process. Young people, young job seekers, they want to apply on their phones and they want it to take less than 30 minutes or they're out. They want to hear immediately that you got their application. And if they don't get some sort of feedback within 2 weeks, they're going to believe that they're out of the running and they're going to move on. and focus on brand and reputation. I know that's a critically difficult thing to do right now for the federal government, but understand how people feel about your organization and try to drive a positive brand and reputation. Employee engagement. Deliver a positive employee experience. What do we mean by that? The moments that matter between the employee and the employer could be daily, weekly, monthly, annually, only at the beginning of the end of the employee's tenure, that affect how the employee feels about the organization and whether or not they're going to stay with the organization, beginning before they even join and extending throughout that employee's entire tenure with the organization. Give employees a voice, focus groups, one-on-one surveys, and develop more effective people managers. People don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And in terms of what we call this human AI advantage, be transparent about how you're using AI, what you're doing to make sure you're doing it ethically, and educate employees about how you're using it and how it's going to affect their jobs, and then use AI to improve that employee experience. What do we mean by that? How to improve the employee experience? I'll go through these quickly. Meeting summarizers, giving frontline employees the ability to manage their working conditions, whether it's schedules, shifts, location, preferences. Give managers the data, the decision support tools they need to manage their operations. Give people, including in HR, the ability to forecast and project things like retention, retirement, turnover risk, fatigue. Analyze employee feedback. Use AI to collect feedback and then analyze it. How many times do we do surveys or do focus groups? We get a whole bunch of data, information, narratives, and we don't know what to do with it. Well, AI can help you understand. We have something called Employee Voice, where we've been using AI for 10 years to analyze employee survey responses. Job candidate matching. Someone said no one in HR should ever have to write a PD or a job ad from scratch. Performance self-reviews. And wouldn't it be great if we were able to provide our employees with access to policy and benefits information in an interactive way where they didn't have to fight their way through pages and pages of information. So just some examples. I'm going to end by talking about leadership because it's critically important, particularly in difficult times. I mentioned earlier, we have a database through Great Places to Work of about 10 million employee survey responses. Thousands of organizations have been certified as Great Places to Work. What we've been able to do with the data is identify the leadership behaviors in these great places to work. What do the leaders in Great Places to Work, what do they do to create great places? And this is the answer. These are 9 behaviors that Great Place to Work leaders exhibit. And there's no coincidence that listening is at the core of these behaviors, because what we found is that leaders who are great listeners tend to exhibit all of the other behaviors. Now, when we talk about listening, you know, we've all been to those training courses where we're taught to be active listeners. You know, you nod, you stare, and you stare and try to make eye contact. That's not listening. Listening is whether or not you're willing to do something with what you have heard. It's not how you look, it's how you act. And I'm going to give you an example from Fortune magazine's 100 Best Companies to Work For. You may have seen it. We are the engine of those rankings. Great Place to Work collaborates with Fortune to identify those 100 best companies. And you see a Delta airplane because Delta is one of those companies year in and year out. And I fly a lot on Delta. On Monday, I'll be getting on a Delta airplane. Next time you do that, look on the fuselage, the real Delta, not the commuter Delta, and you'll see 14 placards proudly proclaiming that Delta has been designated as a great place to work by 14 different organizations. Now, I bring that up because I was listening to a webinar that we did in cooperation with Fortune, had 3 CEOs of these 3 of these 100 best companies, Hilton, Delta, and a financial services company. And they asked the Delta CEO, they said, you know, how's it possible that you've been designated a great place to work by all these organizations, including Fortune? What have you done to create a great place to work? And he immediately said, because my number one priority is to take care of our people, all 100,000 of them. And we believe in our crusade to create great places to work across all sectors, that if more leaders believe that their number one priority is to take care of their people, they would be great places to work. So anyway, real quick trip through Megatrends, some implications, some suggestions. Happy to have a further conversation offline. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have now. Any comments? I hope some of this resonated with you. We really are proud of this Megatrends research, and we believe it has implications for employers across all sectors.
Thanks, Bob. And, I have a bunch of questions, but I'm not going to ask all my questions because I want other people to ask questions too. But
Great.
I do want to start with the question about sort of the elephant in the room, which is, I know that the Megatrends work was done at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And so it does not recognize what's happened since January 20th of this year. But a lot of things have happened, at least at the federal level, with changes in the new administration. Do you all see something on the screen?
Looks like you're being hacked.
I know. I think.
You might want to take your slides down.
What do you
Take your
see?
slides
I'm not
down.
seeing anything. What are you seeing?
Take the
Take
slide
your slides down.
Take your slides down.
Oh, okay.
Yep, still on the screen.
Great. Well, somebody was trying to get in and I thought I removed both of them, but I don't know who else might be on that might be doing this. Anyway, so last 120 days or so, 100 days or so, talk to me about how, as you've been giving this talk to a lot of places around the country, what are people saying about how what's happening today, at least at the federal level, might actually impact at the state and local level on issues dealing with what the Megatrends identifies, especially the deficit and the employee experience?
Yeah, it's hard to generalize. I'll give you a couple of examples though. There are about 20 states that have created their own versions of DOGE. And as you might imagine, there is a red state, blue state divide with respect to that. And I think a lot of it is they're just trying to demonstrate to Washington that they're on board with the so-called initiative. But we really haven't seen a lot of outcome. One state, for example, eliminated like 60 boards and commissions that really didn't do anything, but they were all unpaid positions. But there's a lot of noise around it. At the local level, I was at the National League of Cities meeting in Washington a few weeks ago, and a lot of angst about what the federal government actions, what the impact's going to be on local government in terms of funding, for example, for public housing. And I know we have some local government people with us, human services, infrastructure. And the National League of City advice to the cities is still, there were conversation about raising taxes temporarily, laying people off. Said don't do anything yet until all this legislation is resolved. So don't panic yet. So there is a lot of angst about it. There are some activities going on. Organizations are still, the ones that we're talking to anyway, are still focused on the employee experience because they're competing for talent. It's very difficult, especially state and local government level, to compete for talent. So they're trying to focus on things like engagement, the employee experience, recognizing that there is a talent gap and it's only going to get worse. But everyone's holding their breath now, particularly in state and local government in terms of funding. So I don't know if that answers a little bit of your question.
Yeah. The talent gap issue for me sort of comes across like something that one part of the system can fix it to some extent, that employers, for example, do good workforce planning, and based on that, they're able to identify what they need, maybe change from historic ways in which they've looked at the skill sets or the degrees that they are looking for, and now looking more at competency-based elements to determine what they need, not just now, but in the future. But from my perspective, the talent gap is something that really requires a lot of different people to be a part of the planning and the change, meaning all the way to even primary education, at the high school, junior high, even earlier level, all the way through post-secondary education, as well as sources of organizations that are trying to build the pipeline outside of the education system, and then, of course, employers. So sometimes it comes across to me like folks think we just can flip a switch when building the capacity for some of the technology and skill sets we need for AI, it's got to happen so much earlier than right now in terms of being able to find the talent that we might need. So what kinds of things, beyond what you said so far in your presentation, what kinds of things do you know about where people are trying to bring together all the sort of the right stakeholders that are really thinking maybe outside the box in building that pipeline?
Yeah, in fact, you're just talking to a city today that is doing exactly what you said, Judy. It is reaching down high school and junior high school to try to educate people on the opportunities in the public sector and the opportunity to make a difference and do meaningful work. And that's just one example. I also interviewed the chief of staff today at the Bloomberg Government Excellence organization, and he talked about building using data and building technology capacity, which is a thing that you just discussed. And they're working with cities around building that capacity. But you're right, there isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. And when I talk to organizations, I say creating a great place to work is everyone's job, including leaders. It's not just HR. Oftentimes it's, well, we can't hire somebody, so HR should figure it out. We need to pay more or do this or do that, or we have a lot of turnover, so let's ask HR what we're going to do about it. It is everyone's job to create a great place to work that will attract and retain talent. And another point, and I didn't make it today, but I usually do, is what happens internally affects how people outside the organization view it. So if you have a great culture, you're going to attract people who want to work in a great culture. If you have a bad culture, people are not going to want to come and work with you, and you're going to lose people. And I think that is certainly something that is relevant today with respect to what's going on in the federal government.
I'm going to ask you another question, then Catherine, I'll get to your question that's in the chat. But my second question is about sort of the employee experience issue. I mean, for years, certainly my whole career in the federal government, we at the GAO and even at the Partnership for Public Service have spoken so much about the importance of leadership and the leadership training and development that's critical, not just one time, just as you're getting ready to enter a leadership position, but continuous leadership training and development, because things change and you encounter new problems. And so focusing on how do we improve the quality of leadership should be so important. So anyway, we've been talking about that for a long time. Why do you think it is not seen as an imperative among employers? Why do you think that we see it often, or we hear it often, as a nice to have, but we cut it when we're going to get cut? First thing to go will be training, and usually it's training at all levels, but even including leadership. It becomes a time issue. We don't have time to send our leaders to training, so because they've had so much work to do. How do we get to a point where all the things you were talking about regarding the 9 behaviors right? How do we get to a point where this is recognized as such an imperative that we should be putting that utmost as a priority?
Well, if I had the answer to that, Judy, I have a lot more money than I have right now. But I think
like 3 retirements already. I think you had
Yeah, right. I'd have even more. I think I say this about HR stuff in general. We need to make the business case for why this stuff matters. It's not just the right thing to do. And for example, what I just showed you, that we know through millions of employee surveys what makes great leadership and creates great places to work. And we know that great places to work attract and retain talent. So we have a strong business case. And the organizations that Great Places to Work works with understand that because they understand the business case. And in the private sector, I think it's a little easier to connect the dots because you have the financial outcomes. In the public sector, we don't really have those sorts of outcomes. So it's a lot harder to connect the dots. And it's easy to do what you just said, which is, we have a budget crisis. So we don't know what this training stuff does for us anyway. So let's just get rid of it. So I think it's business case. I think it's accountability, and making an empirical argument, not just it's the right thing to do argument. Easier said, I get it. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, and making the business case, I feel so often we've made the business case. I don't know why it isn't that compelling. I'll get to Keisha and John just a minute, but Catherine and a couple of others have questions in the chat box. So Catherine's question was, how does a white collar recession, which has been going on for a while, fit into the recognition of workforce deficit? And Catherine, you can unmute to explain more.
When you say, Catherine, when you say white collar recession, what do you mean?
Sure. So I think since 2024, actually, even before the change in administration, there's been talk about how difficult it is for white collar workers, more professionals to find new roles, right? So I think it takes longer, more difficult to find the right places. And that's become even more accelerated after, at least for the public sector space. So I'm just wondering how that fits into that knowledge that exists. And yet there's still this, you're saying that there's a deficit of workforce. So like, how does the white collar fit into that? Or is that looked at in that way?
Well, I think that's part of the deficit. Now, you could slice and dice that and take a look at specific occupations. But as technology advances, I don't know how you define white collar, but professional or whatever, those people are going to be in demand as well. And in fact, they may be even in more demand as theoretically AI eliminates some of the lower level jobs. So I think that's sort of baked into that 6 million deficit that they project by 2032.
Yeah, I think where I was going was opposite, though, is that there's not as much demand for white collar workers are trying to go after the same jobs. There's less jobs for white collar workers in my mind.
There may be, with respect to federal government employees who are looking for jobs, but I think in the larger economy, there still is. I mean, I'm doing some work with the Government Finance Officers Association, and they are desperate for financial managers, accountants, people who you describe as white collar people. They're thinking about all kinds of things to try to bring those people into the workforce, including eliminating degree requirements, and as Judy said, drilling down into high school and junior high. So, I think it's probably occupation specific.
Okay, thank you.
And Gwen talks about peer specialists. It's not a question. She's just sharing the idea that there's been a lot of success with peer specialists in place of traditionally educated case managers. Anything, Gwen, you want to add to that?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you for the first time. My first meeting, yay. But I run Maryland programs for a really large homeless nonprofit in the area. And we've been having so I run all the Maryland programs, and we've been having a hard time finding case managers. So we've been talking to peers, people with lived experience, people that have been through recovery, people who have been homeless and got rehoused. And so instead of looking to people with necessarily, bachelor's degrees, which we're looking for, we're like, what having really great success with just the work. We haven't seen any drop off in there's no, what word am I looking for? There's no drop off in the outcomes. The work, maybe the writing needs a little bit of help, but hey, that's what Chat GPT is for, right? With the notes and everything. But we've just had great success, and we're really lifting people out of poverty too, because we're still paying a living wage similar to what we would for our case managers. So it's not like we lowered the wage down, right? We said it costs $60,000 a year to run a one-bedroom apartment in this county. Peers are going to be with, bachelor's levels. People are going to pay the same. And, we're not just having work done by people that are really doing a good job and also have a vested interest at a different level than someone who went to school, but we're also lifting the people that have been homeless into homes of their own. So it's been like a really great, like all-encompassing idea that we've had. So
what a great example. And another one, there's a housing authority in California that put in place a special hiring process to hire people, the public housing, who live in public housing, to hire them into jobs in the public housing buildings, because who knows better what it's like to live and work there than people who already live there. And it's been a very successful program along the same lines. You should reach out to Opportunity at Work, because what you've just described is a terrific example. And I'm happy to connect you if you want to reach out to me.
And I would say that what she's saying is also the perfect example for why we need to move to what is the competency we need, what are the skills that we actually need, not what some predetermined sense of stereotype as to who the person needs to look like, or be like in terms of background and education. So that's a great example of the whole competency-based approach to things. So then Dale talks about the fact that there was a Wall Street Journal article he saw, which speaks to the fact that there seems to be some trend toward less patience with employees and less willingness to satisfy some of the expectations of employees. We heard this actually on a couple of drinks and conversation discussions. Andy Pravard mentioned it. He works a lot in the private sector right now, in addition to the public sector, and he's seeing a real change in what people at the employers are looking for from their employees, which is way more cutthroat, less collaborative. And so curious, Bob, if you've seen anything or heard anything about some of this trend that Dale's mentioning.
There does seem to be some research showing that the balance of power is shifting more towards the employer and away from the employee. But our belief is that employers who pay attention to the employee experience and understand their employees' expectations and their need to focus on things like well-being are going to be the ones that are able to attract and retain talent. Now, that doesn't mean, you need to, all these tech firms, not us, we don't do this stuff, but, they do your dry cleaning and they feed you and you can, play foosball and all that stuff. That's all gone because those organizations are actually laying people off. So, those perks that we once heard about are gone, but we still believe that employers who create great places to work are going to be more successful in attracting and retaining talent, even as the pendulum begins to shift back.
So Alan's question, and then I'll go to John, and that'll be the last question, I think, because we got to move on the agenda. But Alan's asking about succession planning and about sort of the engagement, involvement of HR offices with the organization's leaders. And he's saying, do you think HR offices get enough respect as partners with leaders in talent recruitment and retention?
Well, certainly, Alan, HR should be involved and maybe lead in succession planning in terms of creating the models and providing support. Now, do HR offices get enough respect? The good ones do. We've been here. I'm tough on HR. We've been hearing for many years about how HR wants a seat at the table, right? Well, in order to get a seat at the table, you got to bring something to the table. And I think a lot of that is, I did a session once and I showed a bunch of data research. It was an HR group and somebody commented, most of the comments were good, but somebody commented and said, too many numbers. And my response was, there aren't enough numbers in HR. we need to be able to make the business case for why the stuff we think is important for the organization. And if we can do that, then we will get more respect. And if we have a highly capable and competent HR office, then we will get respect that communicates, that understands the business, and is willing to do what it takes to make their business partner successful. We'll skip Palguda, right?
No. I'm assuming, Keisha, that you did take your hand down. So so John, please.
Okay, so this is a forward-looking question for the federal government. The current administration has taken a different tact than most previous administrations in terms of workforce management. Canceling flexible work arrangements, slashing workforce sizes somewhat indiscriminately. I don't know when they're going to do the next federal employee survey, but I suspect there's going to be potentially some changes. But my question isn't about, those things. It's about what does the next administration do? No one should be surprised about what this administration is doing, because we had Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation, which basically laid out a plan here for a number of things, including for the workforce, and they're following that plan. My question is, if an organization, ASPA, NAPA, whoever, were to take on a Project 2030 to provide an outline of actions for the next administration, on the workforce front, what would be some of your top line areas in Project 2030?
In terms of recovering from?
Well, in terms of doing something different. Yeah, you could also be, hey, do whatever we're doing, let's just keep doing that. But I don't think that would probably be most people's inclination. So in terms of rebuilding, would we rebuild what previously existed, or would we build something different in terms of workforce management? I think there's going to be some recovery needed. And for some organizations which are somewhat decimated right now. But any thoughts in terms of if you're doing the outline for the workforce part of Project 2030, what do we focus on?
That's an essay question, not a short answer question. And I would
to it, Bob.
I think the people in our virtual room here probably have some answers. I think part of what's going to have to happen. And I use the term branding and marketing, and it sounds trivial, but in order to rebuild the federal workforce, I think people are going to have to value and appreciate the work that the federal government does. It's easy to see in local government what local government employees do, right? Because I can go to the park, I can go to the library, my trash gets picked up. You have a fire, the fire department will show up, the police department will show up. And that's why trust in local government is much higher than it is in the federal government. But the federal government is so divorced from most people. They don't know what it does. And that's why I think it's sad, but a lot of people are saying, well, these people didn't do anything anyway, so what's the problem with firing them all? I think there has to be there really has to be a marketing campaign, communication. It's got to be more sophisticated than that. But to show the American public what the federal government does and why people should want to be part of that mission. And right now, people are not feeling that. And a lot of it has to do with, I don't really know what the federal government does. I interviewed a guy who said, keep government out of my life, but don't mess with my Social Security. That's kind of the thing. I don't know what government does until I don't get something that I think I should get. But there really has to be, and this is right up the alley of the Partnership for Public Service, whether it's Service to America, medals, or any of the other programming. But the American public really doesn't appreciate what the federal government does, and that is And that's only getting worse. And that's a big problem that has to be addressed in my view. There's a lot more than that, but at a, kind of a high level. That's part of what I would say.
That's a good answer, Bob. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
I love John's question because I too think we need to be focused on a 2030 plan that really identifies what needs to happen. I'm not going to suggest rebuilding as much as how would we want it to be different than all the years that we've been doing it before now. This is a plug from a programming standpoint. I'm going to take it away from Kitty and do it myself, but Nicole Evans, who you can see her picture, but she's not live on the screen right at this minute, but she's going to be someone speaking with us in July. I think it's July 17th. We're going to do a drinks and conversation. And I would say that your question, John, is a good one for that conversation because Nicole she's now in the private sector, but there she is. But she worked in OPM long time trying to she was given a long-term problem, which was how to speed up background checks. Because it was just taking forever, right? And it was slowing hiring down. And we've been talking about trying to make the hiring process faster and faster because of all the things we've just been talking about. And she was given the problem and told, fix it. And what she's going to talk about on July 17th with us is what she did to try to deal with something that most people just were throwing their hands up. I mean, DOD had the job and they gave it to OPM saying, we can't deal with it, you fix it. And OPM knew before Nicole that there were problems inherent in the way the process worked, but no one seemed to know the answer to how to fix it. So Nicole's going to walk us through that, not so much from the standpoint of background checks, but more from the standpoint of how should we approach knotty problems, right? How should we approach problems that have just been facing us forever and that we don't seem to have the ability to try to turn them around? And I think she has some real insights and some real lessons to learn about how we can do that for something as important as background checks were.
And the point you're making, Nicole, I think there is a supply and demand issue around private sector employers and public sector potential candidates. I think part of the challenge for public sector folks is to try to translate their experience into ways that make sense for the private sector, not just tasks and responsibilities, but also what they've actually achieved and outcomes. And that's sometimes a tricky thing for them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking with everyone. Thanks, Judy, for that tee up there. But I agree with you, Bob. And I work a lot with people trying to translate their experience, having recently made the transition to the private sector. Not saying that I'm some expert at it, but I empathize with the public sector employees trying to make that transition and try and work with them as much as possible.
So I'm going to have to put a stop to this wonderful conversation. It's been terrific. Connie had a question and I'm going to send it to Bob and see if I can get him to answer it and send it back out to people so that Connie's question can be addressed too. But
and I'll answer Dale's question as well if you send it to me.
Oh, okay.
Above Nicole's.
Oh, that you mean Catherine was reacting to Dale's?
Oh, that was I'm sorry, that's Catherine. I thought she tagged Dale. Sorry.
So Bob, thank you so much for this. This was terrific. Really appreciate the time that you took to not only talk to us about this, but I'm really looking forward to the fact that you're going to be joining our chapter as a virtual member. For everybody here, I told him that he can be a virtual member to our chapter, even though he lives in Wisconsin, because many of our members are virtual as well. But thanks, Bob, again. I really appreciate it. And
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. I know there's more that we can have you talk about, but that'll come later.
Okay.
So next up on the agenda are the awards. And I see Billy, and I think that David will be getting on in just a moment. So, there he is. So I'm actually going to go with David first. We have two awards that we give out annually, or we try to give them out annually. One of them is the Francis Kelsey Award, Francis Kelsey Award for Courage. We came up with that, and looks like he may have dropped off. He was on earlier. David Reed was on for a little bit. He was our treasurer at the time that we came up with the Francis Kelsey Award, and it was his idea. Francis Kelsey was an FDA a doctor who was responsible for reviewing the pharmaceutical issues associated with new drugs. And she was very concerned about the science behind thalidomide being given to children because of real serious problems, not just with deaths, but with birth defects. And she tried to send that concern up the chain of command and really couldn't get much traction because people were hell-bent on making this drug available to the public, even though there were serious evidence that it should not be. And she held out. She made sure that her voice was heard, and her voice was heard in a way that ultimately they ended the use of thalidomide because of her advocacy and courage in making sure people understood the serious implications of the US government approving it for wide scale use. So our winner for the Francis Kelsey Award is David Liebrick. David is getting this award because he was the first voice out there that we heard, both inside and outside of government, that we need to protect the interest of government and the American people. He was, for a brief time, acting Treasury Secretary, but for a long time, he was the director of the Bureau of Fiscal Services within the Department of Treasury. And you may not know a lot about fiscal services, but that's where we pay all our bills. That's where a lot of money is paid out. To the tune, I think in last fiscal year, I saw $5.4 trillion went through those systems, and that's only like 80% of what we spend in government, but it was going through the systems that he had responsibilities for. And when the current administration came in and wanted access to those systems, and he determined that they were not US government employees, he raised a question as to whether that was an appropriate access, whether appropriate access should be given. And he sent that up the food chain. And I guess he got the answer, because the answer was, thank you very much, David, you can step aside. And after 35 years, he chose not to just step aside and stay, but to actually retire. But for those of us here in the chapter, particularly at the board level, recognizing the importance of the steps that he took to try to elevate and let be known that this is something that we should not be willy-nilly, we should be concerned, because that's a lot of proprietary information. That's information about Social Security recipients, federal government employees, contractors, bondholders, lots of people, and their information are in the systems that he had responsibility for. And he really didn't want to give the keys to our family jewels to people who were not federal employees, who had not been given and taken the oath of office as a federal employee to protect the Constitution, right? And to ensure that only the people that have access have appropriate, legitimate access for it. So David is someone who retired after 35 years in the federal government, just at the end of last year, or early this year. And I'm honored to give him, or be the person anyway, that's giving him the Francis Kelsey Award. He will be receiving it's a box that says, "We the People." It's just a token of our appreciation for what he's done, but it's also just a little sidebar. When I guess it was about 50, 60 years ago, they had to repair and remove the marble steps to the Capitol because they'd gotten so worn after 150 years. So to replace them, they took all the old marble away. Instead of throwing it away, they kept it, they grinded it down, and the Historic Society of the Capitol kept that, and they actually embed these pieces of crumbled marble, and they put it in resin, which is in this box. So this box actually has some real history to it, not just something that says "We the People," which is something that we all believe in. So David, I wanted to give you a couple of minutes to say something so people can hear your voice, and again, to thank you for your fabulous service and leadership.
Good. Well, thank you, Judy, and thank you. I see several familiar faces on the call here, so it's nice to see them. And really, I think your description of the Frances Kelsey, what she did was really quite remarkable, and saving millions of lives. I think in large measure because of the things that she did changed the way the FDA actually looked at drug approval, not just in that specific instance and the lives that she affected, but even going forward. And that is really worth honoring, and it's a remarkable set of accomplishments she did. I think if I looked at it correctly, she had a 46-year career in the federal government. I ended up at 36, and I would say that I had a great run, and I started the government as a GS9 presidential management fellow. And so this question you all had earlier about, well, look, if you're going to reform government, what do we need to do? Well, I'd say the first thing you do is you need to turn the spigot back on and hire twice as many presidential management fellows as you are currently, just to sort of make sure that we are being more responsive. I think, I look at my career, and I like to think that I was always learning and growing in that, but quite frankly, it's really important to have new people come into the organization. And that's actually one of the really important lessons I learned throughout my career, is how important it is to listen to new people and young people within an organization. And when you stop that, you really do you have an enormous impact. You don't necessarily recognize it immediately, but you do feel it down the road. And I think that's one of the things that's happened in the last 100 days. That is one of the things that is going to have one of the most lasting impacts on government, not to the better. And so, I think, looking forward, that would certainly be a strong recommendation. How do we attract more young people into the government? I had so many interesting positions, and I could spend all night talking about those interesting positions, all the way, serving in those last days as acting deputy secretary and secretary. But I would say that, and I have worked with some of the most remarkable people, across 6 administrations, 12 secretaries, understood really, I think, a keen sense of what it means to be a civil servant, and how you actually do that interface between being a civil servant and the political. Administrations come in with very ambitious agendas, policy agendas, and I think many of them don't realize that the success or failure of those agendas are going to be determined by how well they actually lead and manage and interact with the career civil service. When they inherit a bureaucracy, they inherit a budget, they inherit technology, they inherit people, and very few of them really oftentimes take the time to understand or appreciate that the ability to navigate within the federal government is oftentimes the difference between being successful and not being successful. I'd like to think over the course of my career, I was one of those people who provided that connective kind of interaction between what it meant to take a policy and then actually implement it across the government. And I can talk about, I was very excited about, I think probably the most important thing I did in my career was getting those 480 million economic impact payments out in 8 days after the president signed the bill. In the first round. In the second round, it was, only 1 day where over, half the payments were paid within a day. And that averted an economic and humanitarian crisis. I mean, it was really a really important thing to do. And we had to think about things very differently to get that done. And yet, I often say you would have thought after that trust in government would have gone up. It actually didn't. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because in large measure, I think, in terms of the polarization we have and the like. But it was an example of, I think, in my career, of something that we really did, not seen by the public. And I think what's quite remarkable about this is the vast majority of people who received those payments didn't have to do anything to receive them. I mean, think about that for a second. I mean, we got 162 million payments out, and the people who received those didn't in less than 5 weeks. And the people who received them didn't have to do anything to receive those payments. And that's really, quite remarkable. And again, I think it's a tribute to being very creative and being very agile and thinking about problems in a different way. But while I can talk about all those really neat things and accomplishments that, one might say is, we all know that at the end, it's really the people you work with that's made the difference in your career. And I think the thing that I was always most proud of in my career was the teams that I built, identifying really rich talent, good talent, and developing that talent. And to the point where, one of the things that's been kind of interesting to me since I've left is how many people who used to work in the fiscal service have gone out in the private sector and say, you don't realize we are a better run organization than most private sector organizations. And the level of commitment, and even going back to the economic impact payments, we had people working 7 days a week to get those payments out, and did that voluntarily. We didn't have to sort of say, hey, you must or you shall. They did it because they really believed in the mission. And so many of us in the public sector, our careers were really built around that. So, we do have these really vital functions that we do. The public doesn't know it. And I always would say that, we did our jobs and we did all these really important things. And probably the best tribute to that is that no one knew we did it. If they had known that we had done it, it meant we probably weren't doing our jobs. And the fact that most people had not heard about the Bureau of the Fiscal Service or the Fiscal Service prior to the end of January is a tribute to that. I do think that, I would talk a little bit about, the importance of principled leadership and people, your reputation, what your reputation means. I was on a phone call. I had decided to step down on Wednesday evening. And had given notice on Thursday morning that I was doing that. My last day was going to be Friday. I actually, quite frankly, thought I was going to leave government quite quietly. I didn't think that it would make much of a splash, because that's just what we do. We do our jobs, and then if we don't do, that's what a civil servant does. I was on a phone call at 7:15 in the morning when the Washington Post story dropped, a great surprise to me, saying that I was leaving, that this was kind of significant. By 7:25, I'd already gotten an email from someone saying, my gosh, this is really, unfortunate, and we really can't believe it. And then got numerous other, kind of support throughout, that I think in the community of saying, hey, this is what you've done is very significant and very important. And since then, many number of people have come up to me who have been in other agencies and have said, how you handled that situation was really a roadmap of how we handled our situation. And really, while I'll say it was a little bit surprising what happened, and I wasn't unprepared. When I was preparing to be secretary, I realized I had anticipated that I would likely be asked to do something that was not going to be legal. And so when I put my transition team together, I found the best lawyer in Treasury to be as part of that transition team. And so, I knew and having lived through debt limits, by the way, is another story. I really did understand what the legal responsibilities were. I also understood the oath to office, that we take to the Constitution, and how important it is to uphold that. And that, in fact, was part of my conversation with the secretary. When I had my conversation with him about leaving, was about the seriousness and with the seriousness with which I took that oath. And I think that, even beyond that, there are things around national security, there are things around privacy, and there are things about when you run really important systems, you don't want them to break. And so you can't have anyone who knocks on your door and says, hey, can I come in and look at your system? You kind of say, well, wait a minute, that's not such a good idea. Maybe we need to hold off a little bit on that. And it turns out, looking back, I feel very good about each decision I made every step along the way, including not allowing one person to have access to the system, who many of you, if you followed this, turned out that he is forced to resign, 3 days or 4 days later because of having not done a sufficient background check. And Nicole, who is I see on here, look, the thing that sort of really struck me as unusual is how in the world did our security office, those of us who worked in Treasury for the years, how in the world did they allow this person into the Treasury Department and give him some sort of a clearance, when we know when we bring people in, it takes months to go through that process. it just, I think, exhibited the amount of pressure that was being brought on any number of people across the organization to do things they wouldn't normally do. So I will just stop. I know I've probably gone a little bit longer than you allowed me to, and I apologize for that. But I would say that, I think the thing that I have done since I have gone, I'm doing a number of different things, but I really do continue to have a strong commitment to making sure that as as the dust settles and we think about what civil service should look like and what government should look like, I would just pick up on the conversation earlier. I don't think you're going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. I think what you need to figure out is what should this opportunity to make government work better for people, and so that it really does, in fact, connect with that notion about how do you instill more trust in government. And I was back in the Midwest recently, and someone said they didn't have trust in government, and they said, well, why was that? Well, I had a bad experience in the Social Security Administration. Well, what we should be doing more often is following Bob and saying, Bob, why did you have a bad experience? And how do we at every step along the way fix Bob's friction? We don't do that enough. And so I think that's one of the things that we're really going to need to do going forward, is thinking about how we build systems and how we build processes that actually meet the needs of people where they are and how they expect to receive those services. So with that, I'll just say again, thank you. And I appreciate the honor and wish you all well as you continue to wrestle with these meaty questions.
Thank you so much. That was terrific. Really terrific. And I'm just, again, so proud to know people like you have been, are still, and have been in government, because that's the role model we need. Not just today, but going forward. So thank you so much, David. The second chapter award is for outstanding contribution and excellence in the chapter, the National Capital Area chapter. And I'm thrilled to announce that Billy Leisterson is the winner of this year's Outstanding Contribution Award. And it's a contribution and excellence in terms of what he has done for the chapter and for the American Society for Public Administration. I've known Billy since he became a member of the chapter, and he was a board member from 2017, became our treasurer in 2019, and only recently stepped down when Wendy Chen came on as our treasurer. But it's not just the work that he did as treasurer that he's being identified in and honored for this award. When he first joined our chapter, one of the things we were trying to figure out is how to be a better chapter in offering mentoring to people in our chapter who would like mentoring, to have a mentor. What's it like to be a mentor? How can you be a good mentee? How can you be a good mentor? What are some resources that we could pull together? And he had a group of at least at one point 12 members who were working with him on creating a program and system for that type of mentorship program. I was incredibly amazed at what he put together in terms of not just the people that worked on it, but the content of the work that he and others were able to develop. We don't have the same active mentoring program per se, although many of us in the chapter are mentors. And for those of you who might be interested in having a mentor, there are a number of great people in our chapter that would be terrific to pair up with you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me or others if that's something that you would be interested in. But Billy has a science background, science and I think math and biology were his degrees and PhD. So part of his benefit to us was constantly keeping us focused on the analytics of our work. What's the impact of what we're doing? What is it we want to measure in terms of outcome? What is it that we really feel will help us know that we have been successful? And I miss that about Billy not being in the chapter as a board member today, because he was such a wonderful voice to the board in helping us really think through not just what do we want to do, but how do we want to do it and why do we want to do it? So Billy, congratulations on your award and being an award recipient. We're so proud and happy that you are a part of our chapter.
Thanks, Judy. This award means a tremendous amount to me. And I can't think of another group of people that I would rather receive an award from that recognizes what my efforts. I really am humbled and honored. Humbled because I look around and we have such talent in our chapter and on our board, really unbelievable backgrounds. And a lot of what drove me was just the desire to try to harness that and for us to leverage that and help anybody who needs it, young people, transit, mid-career people, anyone who could benefit from the kind of networking that you get from a professional society. It's been my gift to you, to the institution. I'm an institutionalist. I believe in trying to not just do well in the moment, but leaving something behind that will strengthen the organization. And if I've been able to succeed at that at all, then I feel like my time has been well spent. Finally, I'll just say that I have really enjoyed my time working with you, with many of you, and I see new faces, which I always love. And I hope I will be able to become a more active participant at some point. But for now, I need to be taking care of what I need to take care of. So thank you all, and thank you for this award.
Yay! And now we need to turn it back over to Josh and Alan to hear from our essay winners. I apologize that we're running a little bit late, but anxious to hear from the award winners, the essay winners.
Well, thank you, Judy. Yeah, we've done a lot of conversations tonight about thinking about the future as well. And one of the most important things the chapter can do is identify the talented individuals who are coming from our universities and will be the leaders of our field for a long time. That's that's one of the primary purposes of this student essay award that the chapter set up a couple years ago. It's also to get us to hear thoughts from the current generation about things we should think about differently. And two individuals tonight who are award winners have done that. Joshua and I have had the honor of being co-chairs of the essay contest. We also have the honor of reading the essays and having first opportunity to gain knowledge that our students are providing us. And this program is offered to, this essay contest is offered to any student who is studying government, public administration, public policy, whose universities have a location in the metropolitan Washington, D.C. area. They may not be, the primary location may not be in the Washington, D.C. area, but they have a facility here and they've spent some time here doing that. So our two award winners, the first place winner is Derek Boudou. He's a PhD candidate from Florida International University. And his paper is Public Administration in the Age of AI, Integrating Human-Centered Design, the 4 E's, and Combating the Dark Side of New Technologies. I think that connects a little bit with Bob's presentation tonight. It was wonderful to read. I will state that as first place winner, he will receive $2,000 as an award, as well as a 3-year membership to the American Society for Public Administration. We hope he will select NCAC as his home chapter. And I'm going to ask Derek to do a brief highlights of his paper in a few moments. Our second place winner is Pablo Acola, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Maryland. And his paper was also very exciting to read. It's called Expanding Opportunities Reduce Crime? Exploring the link between social equity and security. Again, thought-leading papers that I think some of our practitioners might not have the broad bandwidth to think about as both of these individuals did in their papers. And Pablo will receive as second place a $1,500 cash gift, as well as a 3-year membership to the American Society for Public Administration. And Pablo, since you are at the University of Maryland, I mean, come on. But I want to congratulate both of you. Pablo, Derek's going to give a more detail, but do you want to say a little bit about your paper for a second?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. It's been a really great meeting. And well, just as overall about my research, I'm studying what happened. Well, in Mexico, we have the problem of cartels. They are recruiting people, and that's creating violence in the country. Also, well, all other problems in the rest of the world. And there's a program that is providing a minimum wage to young people to join different companies. And I'm evaluating the impact of this program on the reduction on homicides. And apparently the problem is having an effect, so you can read more about that in the paper.
Yeah, and I thank you, Pablo, and I will let you know that their papers will be on our website. So anytime you want to go and read them, that would be, and I strongly encourage you to please read them. So Derek, it's your moment. To please give us a few highlights of your paper.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. I am truly honored to receive this first place award, and I want to thank ASPA National Capital Area Chapter for this incredible recognition. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my research work and also share my ideas on how, in the age of AI, public administration, scholars, and practitioners can integrate human-centered design and the 4 E's, particularly equity, ethics, empathy, and engagement, which clearly resonates with what Bob was talking about employee engagement and also how AI interconnection. And in the interest of time, I'll just, go a little brief about it, and maybe somebody will ask me what motivated me to write these 1,800 or 1,900 words. This essay grew out of both deep concern and deep hope. Concern in terms of because we are seeing governments across the world, including here in the United States, increasingly relying on AI systems to provide public service and make decisions that affect real people's life, especially people that get social benefits, that are police and medical care. And in many cases, we all know that providing fair and equitable services during unexpected crisis present a significant hurdle for public service in today's context. However, these AI systems or technologies replicate the very biases and inequities we spend decades trying to dismantle. And my hope is that I believe that if we get this right, just as what Bob was talking about incorporating, and engaging human with the AI and be able to practice human-centered, design and also do cross-sector collaboration, we can do better in leveraging the good use of AI and counter the dark side of it in our dispensation. So when you read the essay, it is in twofold. So the first one talks about present the contemporary public administration challenges in the AI era, and it raises concern about how providing fair and equitable services during unexpected crises like COVID-19 represent a significant hurdle in nowadays. And it further discusses significant challenge confronting public service, which is the risks posed by advanced technology and utilization of AI. And it talks about how, despite these new developed tools have contributed to lowering both human resource expenses and costs associated with sense making, their impact on turnover or even affecting public servants, retention has been underrated. And second, it presents an approach that public administration practitioners and scholars should incorporate human-centered design. And by human-centered design, I mean practices that mainly focus on the needs, experiences, and the dignity of the people, and by advocating for social compassion and incorporating an ethics, empathy, and engagement, because AI do not have the ethics, they do not have an empathy when it comes to, rendering services. And at the end, they try to understand that, National Capital Area chapter with as well as other chapters can even collaborate with these AI companies to design some systems or projects as well as innovative forum that can help us, to engage with AI and understand ways that we can balance equity, ethics in areas that AI cannot, handle. So in conclusion, technology doesn't define our values, we do. And AI should not be used to replace human compassion or fairness. And there is one thing that is associated with ethics that AI do not normally have, and that kind of empathy. And it must be a tool that reflects and amplify our deepest commitment to justice, dignity, and service. And as public servants or public administrations practitioners, it is our responsibility to lead the way, not just with innovation, but with intention. Thank you once again for this award. I'm truly I'm humbled to receive this, and I think this money or this cash prize will go a long way to help me in my research, as well as also other people way back in my home country, Ghana, that will also benefit from it, because I do also have some students that I kind of like inspire and want to uplift them. So it will really go a longer way to help me individually and also to external body in the globe. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Pablo. Both wonderful papers. And Derek, I like your question. So I want to, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you and Pablo to provide to Dale Jones, and we'll post it on our website, the statement about what motivated you to write the papers. We want to post that on our website. So if you could do that in a little while, next couple of days or within a week, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
I will say that Joshua and I enjoyed working together so much this year and enjoyed the process so much that we are doing it again. We're going to co-chair next year. And so please watch your emails. In about August, we'll be announcing the 2025-2026 essay contest. So please join us. And Pablo and Derek, I hope you will promote these with your fellow colleagues. So with that, President Jones, over to you for the state of the chapter.
Thank you, Alan. I'll start by congratulating our chapter awards recipients, David and Billy, and also congratulating our student essay contest winners, Derek and Pablo. Thank you very much and congratulations. I also want to thank Bob for his wonderful keynote speech and for him sharing his perspectives, providing his insights, and answering our questions. Judy, this recording is going to be very valuable because of all the excellent remarks that have been made by the speakers, and I really mean that. Thanks also to Alan and Joshua for once again managing the student essay contest. So it is time for a brief State of the Chapter address. I'll start by boiling it down to 2 words. We have a robust and healthy chapter. Everything else I say follows from that. I want to express my appreciation and pride for working with our fantastic chapter members and our highly qualified board members who comprise a truly special chapter of ASPA. We are indeed very fortunate to be based in the nation's capital and at the intersection of three significant governments, the District of Columbia, the state of Maryland, and the Commonwealth of Virginia, along with many county and local government entities that are consistently ranked among the best in the nation. I thank all of you on this call, as well as all of those other civil servants working for all of those governments for the work that they do, especially in these challenging times. I also want to thank publicly all of the board members for their service. And I want everyone to know that they are incredible human beings, citizens, public servants, and volunteers. Their character, collaborative nature, service before self values, and work ethic comprise the core strength of our board. Our number one strength, and the board members have heard me say this throughout the year, our number one strength as a board is how all of us as highly qualified people with incredible commitment work together to make this successful. I also want everyone to know that our chapter officers and directors were elected for 2-year terms, and those terms end at the end of this year. So we'll have elections later this year. If you haven't done so, I would encourage you to visit our website, ASPA-NCAC.org, if you haven't done that recently, all the members out there. Finally, according to our April 2025 membership roster that we received recently from ASPA, our chapter has 256 dues-paying members, and Connie Burhane, our Director of Membership, informs me that we are always steady at least 235 members throughout the year, and right now we're about 20 above that. In the last year, we've had 12 to 15 new members added, and we've had 46 renewals. I want to mention a few things about our financial strength. Wendy Chen is our treasurer. She's an associate professor of political science at Texas Tech University. Previously, she earned her doctorate at George Mason University. She's a superb scholar with research interest in strategic planning, nonprofit organizations, and social entrepreneurship. As of the end of April, our assets for the chapter are as follows. Our checking account has a balance of $2,124, and our money market balance is over $16,000. Next, I'd like to address our programming strength. Kitty Woolley, on the call here with us now, is our programming chair. She completed a full career in a wide variety of management and leadership roles for the U.S. Department of Education here in Washington, D.C. She is a perpetual, energetic connector of people and generator of ideas. So Kitty, thank you very much for all that you do. And just a few highlights of our programming from this past year. We collaborated with the American Association for Budget and Program Analysis on 2 events. We had a wine and cheese reception in November. We also put together a Federal Budget 101 session delivered by the AABPA president, Andy Pavard, in January. And that answered a need that was expressed in earlier focus groups about what people wanted to have addressed or sessions they wanted to be available. Other events that we had, we supported student and mid-career practitioner members by hosting 2 intergenerational drinks and conversation events that provided space to address common sources of workplace pain. Finally, the chapter made some financial commitments to sponsor 2 large sessions at the recent ASPA annual conference 6 weeks ago. We sponsored a presidential panel on trust in government, and we also sponsored an informal reception and relationships opening event on the first evening of the conference. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that some of these events that our chapter has sponsored or hosted provide a coaching space and a safe space for those in public administration who have experienced job losses this year. So that's my report. It's brief, but again, we have a healthy organization. All of you helped to make that happen. Before we close our annual meeting, I would like to give anyone on the call who's been with us during this event tonight an opportunity to make any comments you might want to make in this open forum. Anybody want to add anything? Someone that perhaps hasn't spoken this evening? Or anyone have any ideas or suggestions or questions you would like to share or ask? Okay, great. Before Kitty has something. Go ahead, Kitty.
Dale, and this will be really quick. You guys, if there's some kind of programming that you'd like to see happen that you didn't see since the last annual meeting, or you have new ideas later, drop us an email at aspa.ncac@gmail.com and I'll get back to you. Okay? So would really like for you to do that. Very thrilled that Catherine McKinney is here tonight because Catherine was the impetus for the Budget 101 session in January. Catherine actually showed up at our focus group. So if we do one of those again, make sure you come. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Kitty. And I'm glad you spoke because you gave me a chance to put my email address in the chat. Let me know if it went in there. All right, good. Alan has a comment.
My comment is I want to thank you, Dale, for your leadership this year. It's been fantastic. I enjoy working with you and being part of your team. So thank you for everything that you do for our chapter and for our board.
I appreciate that. It's easy when we have the board members that we do. It's easy. So before I actually close it out, I do want to make a comment about Derek and Pablo. When our other speakers, Bob Lavigna and David Lebrecht and Billy Lieserson were speaking, I kept thinking about you, Derek, and I kept thinking about you, Pablo. You guys are young. Look at those smiles on their faces. You're the future. You're intelligent. You're committed. The future is bright when we have people like you and many, many others of your peers that are going to take these batons from the current generation. So thank you, and we wish you the best in your careers. So thank you all for joining our annual chapter meeting. Feel free to contact me or any other members of the board at any time. Thank you for your service to your communities and to our nation and our society. The work we all do is needed more than ever before. So stay positive and keep being the leaders that you are. Take care. We'll see you next year.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great seeing everybody.
Thanks, Judy.